We are up the mountain today, on the road up the mountain. Some of you should be familiar with this road. It's about a 3-mile long road that gains about 2,500 feet in elevation to get up here. One of the goals when navigating this steep, narrow, windy road is to do it without going over some of the many near drop-offs that are on the edge, because that would lead to a very bad day. Another goal with this road is to keep the whole road from washing down over the edge in the winter storms. So today we're going to do some road maintenance to try to keep that from happening. I'll show you some of the tips and tricks we've learned over the years to keep our roads from washing away. This is what we call a water bar. The problem with roads or anything you drive on, the soil gets compacted. When it rains, it doesn't soak in water like normal soil. So the water just runs down the road. At least on a slope it'll run down the road. It won't do that on flat land. There we go, Mr. Obvious strikes again. As the water accumulates on the road, it runs down the hill. Water bars are spots where we dig a little trench here so the water will run off the road instead of going down the road. The way it's done in a case like this, you take your blade of your cat or whatever you're using, tilt it, and dig the trench out off that way. That works well. This little hill here keeps the water from running over, and the water runs down this way instead. Ideally, you have your trench over here, and then your bump on the downhill side that's big enough to keep the water from rolling over, but not so big that it makes it hard to drive over. In this case, we have a good water bar here, but it's starting to plug up with sediment. All this debris and sediment is building up, and the channel is starting to move over to where it's going to go over the bump at some point. This is where a little bit of road maintenance can go a long way. We'll just clean some of that sediment out of the ditch and pile it on the lower side where the bump is. Now the sediment we're cleaning out of here will help build up the water bar. Now as the water runs down the hill, instead of going down the road, it will follow this ditch and go off the road. Now we'll work our way down the road, fixing trouble spots as we see them. Here's another trouble spot. Got a water bar here, but this is completely filled up with sediment and debris. Instead of coming down here, the water is running down the tire tracks, up over the hump and down the road. Well, all we have to do is just clean this out a little bit. Now, part of the reason I think it did that is because these sticks were here in the spot where the water should be going. Those sticks capture the sediment, and the sediment is building up where those sticks are. So it can be important to keep this area below the water bar free of debris so you don't have a bunch of sediment accumulating here in the debris. All these sticks in here are what caught the sediment and plugged up the outlet. I know it's hard to see angles on video, but that's uphill, this is downhill. We want to pile our tailings here on the downhill side and clean out our trench on the uphill side. Now when the water comes down the road, instead of continuing down the road, it will hit this spot and go down that trench. It can't go down the road because this bump is here in the way, because water doesn't like going uphill. This is looking good. Let's continue down the hill, find the next problem spot. Here's another plugged up water bar. You probably can't tell from video. This is the high spot, this is the low spot. Maybe from this angle you can tell. The downhill side, there's the high spot, the low spot on the uphill side. Water comes down the road. It's supposed to come down this water bar here, but all this debris here has plugged that up. Now the sediment is building back here, and the water just runs straight down the road instead of going off to the side into the water bar. But if we look down the road below it all, which we can't do because there's this big white aluminum can in the way, but if we go around it, Now we can look down the road, but even though the water is going past that water bar running down the road, there's not really much erosion happening until down there where it hits another water bar and the water runs off. So yes, this water bar is plugged, there's water washing down the road, but it's really not causing any problems at the moment. This should be addressed, but I've got 3 miles of road to do. This is not a priority. Someday I'll probably come back and get to this, but today I'm going to focus on the more problem areas. If you work on roads for a while, you can get to know the roads. You learn the places that are erosive, the places that aren't, the places you need to focus your attention on, the places you need to not so much. And even if you don't know the road, sometimes you can just observe what's going on and realize, yeah, water's washing down the road, but this place just isn't erosive. So let's go find some more priority spots. Sometimes the way a water bar performs can depend on the vegetation around it. In this case, we have 2 ponderosa pines right here. And that one, ponderosa pine can lay down a thick layer of needles. The needles fall in the road, catch the sediment. This is a good water bar here. It has the hump there and plenty of space on the uphill side for water to come down. It's clean down here, so it's not catching debris and building up sediment. But up here where the pine trees are laying down this pine straw, it's a little bit erosive around this corner. The sediment comes down, gets tangled up in the pine needles, and it's accumulating here to a point where it's built up and the water is just running over the hump down the road instead of coming down this way the way it's supposed to. A spot like this is just a spot that's going to need more maintenance. Now as the water runs down the road, it can't go up over this bump. It has to come down this trench and off the road. Aside from having the buildup from the needles, this is a well-built, well-designed, well-functioning water bar. One of the reasons is where it starts in the top to where the outlet is, there's a good slope here. The channel where the water runs, it slopes downward steeply. Slopes downward steeply. Is that, maybe that's okay. Sounds weird. One of the reasons for that is it was built at an angle across the road instead of straight across the road. If it was built straight across the road from here to where the water runs off, it's not a very steep angle. But when you make it across the road at an angle, from the uphill side to the downhill side, it's a much steeper angle than if it was straight across. When the water and the sediment comes down here and gets into the water bar, it's traveling down a steep ditch. So the water will have a good flow down the ditch and it'll carry the sediment down the ditch instead of depositing the sediment. If instead the water bar would have made straight across the road in more of a 90-degree angle or closer to a 90-degree angle, a smaller angle, a more acute angle, the water and sediment would come down the road, it would hit that sharp angle and have to turn and go that way. Where it hits that angle and turns, it's going to deposit sediment there. And as it goes across at a much less steep angle, the water's going slower and it's going to deposit sediment in that channel. Did any of that make sense? Sounded like a whole lot of talking and not a whole lot of saying. Maybe a quicker, easier way to say that is, when you make a water bar, make it so when the water's running across the road in the water bar, it's steep and the water will go fast instead of making a water bar where the water will just slowly go across the road. Because if the water's going fast, it carries more sediment. If the water's going slow, it deposits more sediment. Again, that just seemed like a whole lot of talking and not a whole lot of saying. Getting a little too wordy here. Let's go on to the next one. Oh wait, not so fast. You're not off the hook on this one yet. I had one more point to make on this one. Another nice thing about this one is it's made so it's just a gentle roll over the water bar. Instead of having a big bump you have to drive over where your vehicle has to twist and turn to get over it, it's just a nice gentle roll. The big bumps might be good on a road you're trying to decommission, but a road you want to use all the time, those nice rolls on the lower side make for a much better driving experience. I might have already talked about this a little bit on a previous one. I might be repeating myself. Let's go. Another good water bar here, a deep channel well below the upper part so the water will run off the road. A nice rolling hump on the lower side, makes it easy to drive over. It just has these pine needles collecting sediment here. No fault of the water bar, just part of doing occasional road maintenance. Now instead of water running down the road, washing out the road down below, it will go down the water bar and off the road. Right up the road here is a culvert. Before the wet season comes, it's also good to check the culverts. Make sure they are not plugged. This one looks good. Very little debris in the way. Just make sure there's no debris plugging it up or debris that's going to wash down and plug it up. This pipe was put in to stop debris from coming down and plugging it up. This one looks good. We'll continue down the road. Here's an example of a really bad water bar. I am thinking about nominating this water bar to be a contestant in the world's, in the worst water bar in the universe contest. Whenever that's held, I'm not sure when. I think this one has a really good shot at winning. The problem with this one is it's 90 degrees to the road. When the water comes down into it, hits this bump, where's it going to go? It has to slowly go that way, which is not downhill, or it's only slightly downhill. It'll run that way, but it'll run that way slowly. And when it does, it just deposits all this sediment here until it plugs it up and then just continues running over the road. If instead of starting here and making the water bar straight across the road that way, if they would have started up here and made a diagonal water bar, from here to down there is downhill. The water will come downhill, it'll hit the water bar and still keep going downhill and quickly run off the road, taking the sediment with it, instead of depositing the sediment right here in this stupid water bar. I will continue cleaning it up anyway, because we need to get it all cleaned up and prepared for the stupidest water bar in the universe contest. Then I'll show you the other problem with it. It certainly cleans up nice, but don't be fooled by its rugged good looks. Looks aren't everything. Since this one is running 90 degrees to the road, you have to dig it out fairly deep to get it to even work. Have to have a deep trench on this side and a big hill on this side. When you're coming down the hill in a vehicle, the front tires hit both sides of that bump at the same time, and it's just a big obnoxious bump you have to hit when you're coming down the road. Not only that, but it's an ineffective water bar. It's just not pleasant to drive over. Unlike the angled water bars, where you don't have to build them up as high, dig them out as deep, and you can just gently roll over them. So I'm going to knock this bump down a little bit just to make it less obnoxious to drive over, which will make it fail sooner, but it's going to fail anyway because it's a stupid water bar. Okay, I guess that's enough complaining for now. Is it just me, or do I sound a little bit like Andy Rooney complaining about this water bar? Well, actually it's not the end of the complaining, because there's another couple more bad ones down around the corner. We are right below that bad water bar. This is the result of having a failing water bar right above this steep spot. It's digging these ruts in the road. It's even worse up above. This is a good water bar here. It's angled across the road, so it's high up here, low on the downside. But with that failing one up there, there was so much water coming down here and so much sediment coming down, it just overwhelmed this one. My dad already cleaned this one up. Now that that one up there is cleaned out, this one should hold for now. until that one plugs up again, which it will before the winter's over, and more water comes rushing down here. If that one was a good water bar instead of a bad water bar, this one wouldn't be so likely to fail because it gets overwhelmed. He took care of this one too, down below it. He already took care of some of the most high priority ones, the most troubled spots. Because the one above failed, which made the one below it fail, caused all this sediment to rush down here and build up in this one and cause this one to fail. This just isn't a very good one to begin with. It's a little bit angled across the road, but not very angled. It would be better if it started up here and angled down that way. But the way it is now, it's just an ineffective bump in the road. After this fills up with sediment, it doesn't function as a water bar. All it is just a big bump in the road. Some of these water bars just need to be rebuilt. That's not something to do today with a pick. That's something to do some other day when we have a piece of equipment up here, which at the moment we don't. Let's go to the next one. Here's another problem if the water bar isn't angled and steep enough to carry water off the road quickly. This used to be a hump right here, but it's filled up with sediment to where you can't even tell anymore. This downhill part where the water was supposed to be going when it left the road was not steep enough to continue washing the sediment away from the road. The sediment built up here, which made a nice bed for all this vegetation to get established. We got some good silty, loamy bottomland here for all these weeds to flourish in. Now when the water and the sediment goes into the weeds capture the sediment, so the sediment builds up even faster. Sediment backs up into the road, fills up behind the hump to where we don't even have a not a water board, but a water bar or a hump anymore. But we'll make a little bit of a temporary make-do one until we can fix this one with some equipment. This one won't last long, but it'll do a little something for a little while. You're still watching this far into the video? This has to be one of the most boring videos I've ever made. Watching me dig water bars across the road. You are real troopers. I appreciate you sticking with me this long. Off to the next one. Up here is the worst stretch of the road as far as needing water bar maintenance. It's getting some real problems in it. My dad fixed this spot so the water will run down off the road instead of down the road, but this can get a lot of water in winter storms, so I'm going to put a backup down below it just in case that one fails, because I really don't want the water to continue going down the road and washing it out. And this is a good easy spot to dig a little trench. So I thought. Looked softer than that. It's like having a belt and suspenders. If one fails, got the other one to back it up in a critical spot. There's a culvert right here above that spot to carry water across the road, under the road, but it's ineffective because the ditch is all plugged up from the cows trampling it and filling it up with dirt. We really need to get some equipment up here, clean this ditch out so that culvert will do what it's supposed to do. This plugged ditch is one of the reasons why there's so much water going down the road, washing the road out. My dad got most of these water bars, but the more we can do to direct water off the road, the better. This one's probably pointless because we're getting down now to where the cows are more, and they're probably just going to trample this one and mess it up. Trample. Is trample a word? Tromp, trample, trample. I don't know. This one should be more effective at getting water off the road. Might take a little longer for the cows to ruin it. I think that's enough for this stretch. Between my dad and I think we have it covered. Let's go down the hill. Got a culvert up here that has been a problem in the past. Good time to check it and make sure it's not plugged, and make sure there's nothing around it that looks like it could cause it to plug. It's looking good. Got another culvert back here to check. Right before the wet season is a good time to check all the culverts and fix all the water bars. Around here, our wet season is in the winter. We got problems here. I'm gonna have to get serious and get my gloves and more tools. This one is close to plugging up. It has all this debris built up behind it. What happened is this tree came down and the limbs blocked the opening of the culvert. I got it unplugged, but the culvert itself has problems. Need to come up here with a grinder or something and cut these pieces off. This piece here is the biggest obstruction. I don't have the tools with me to fix it. It's mostly open. That will be a big help. Problem with leaving it like that is those pieces can make it easier for things to get hung up and have it plug up again. I have a little bit more to do down the road, but it's all more of the same. So I'll let you off the hook. Won't make you endure this anymore. If you really want to nominate this video for the most boring video in the universe contest, go ahead, I won't be offended. Who knows, maybe I'll win. See ya.